I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the Marriage Initiative, and I'm just delighted to introduce you to Kristine and Mike Stensland. This Minnesota couple founded nonprofit Guide Your Heart to equip people to navigate the complexities of marriage, divorce, and blended families. The two, now married for 19 years, weathered the shared pain of divorce, yet were able to successfully merge their families, including 2 children each. Kristine holds an MBA in finance and a Master of Healthcare Administration. Mike, who founded Agile Outcomes Consulting, has doctoral degrees in applied quantitative psychology and clinical psychology. The two also created genograms.com and blending.love, family mapping software companies. They have become well known in the Rochester, Minnesota area as relationship educators with expertise in divorce recovery and blended families, leading divorce care, premarital, and blended family programs. Kristine and Mike, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. And our dogs decided they did want to participate, so we might have little noses popping up as we talk. But they're part of our blended family too. So here they are.
Well, I can understand that. We love dogs here. Why don't you start by telling us your journey? You guys have a story, and I love how you met even.
I'll let you tell it. You're the storyteller here.
So I went through a divorce, but I was in a Mothers of Preschoolers here at a church in Rochester, and my MOPS group leader was really funny, and she gave me a hard time and she teased me. And then that summer I went through the divorce. I didn't share much about the divorce actually in the MOPS group. And in the fall, I asked to be in her group again because she was funny and I needed lighthearted and I didn't want to feel judged and all the things. And so she ended up being my MOPS group leader again. Well, she came up to me one morning at church actually and said, God woke me up at 2:30 in the morning and you need to meet my brother. And I was like, brother? Like in MOPS, we talk about our children, maybe our parents, mostly our children, maybe again, and our husbands, but like never your brother. And so I was like, all right. She goes, he lives in Indianapolis. Well, I live in Rochester. Indianapolis is 9-hour drive, different time zone. And I was like, what are you thinking? Like that's a different time zone. And then she goes, well, yes, my 2 adorable nieces. And I'm like, oh, great. Time zone, 9 hours and baggage. That sounds great. And then she's like, he has his PhD in clinical psychology and applied quantitative psych. He's really smart. And then she paused and she goes, I mean, but you'd never know it. Because in her head, geek went off and she didn't want, me to not talk to him. So I gave her my email address and I figured, well, I'm going to give her my email and I'll be done. I'll throw her under the bus to her big brother because she always teases me in public. And then we'll be done. And here we are married 19 and a half years later. So with our wee dog sitting in between us wanting some attention. Yes.
I love it.
Yep.
Well, how did that is such a great story. And, part of your journey too, you shared earlier, once you did marry, you were apart a lot. Tell about that, because this is part of the story that you understand as you minister to, divorced families and blended families, how you guys sacrifice to make everything work.
Yes. So my daughters lived in Indianapolis still, and I had them, when we got together, I had them half time. So we went through and negotiated that all out, and I ended up having them 10 days a month. And I would go down to Indianapolis 10 days a month during the school year, kind of a Friday to a Monday. And then we'd have them for half the summer. And so during the first 12 years of our marriage, I lived in Indianapolis for 10 days a month during the school year and the rest of the time up here. So we were living in 2 states in order to make this blended family thing work.
Yeah. And 9 hours away in two different time zones.
Yeah.
And if you want to know the math, it was 4.5 years of the first 12 years of our marriage. I did the math. I'm like, how much were we apart for the beginning of our marriage? And it was equal to about 4.5 years.
Yeah. So how did you start ministering to others?
So the first thing we did, we really felt like God was calling us to just minister to marriage.
To use our pain.
Use our pain. Yeah, that's kind of the thing he does. He redeems story.
Yes.
And so to use our pain to minister to others. And so the first opportunity that came up was to do divorce care with our church. And so for 7 years, we did that twice a year. We led the divorce care recovery and other people going through that same pain. And just getting the groups there and people to talk and the education of it. And
Yeah. But you ended up doing more than that. You
Yeah.
started with divorce care, but then you saw a greater need.
Right. So before we even got engaged, so we were dating, and again, I married a researcher or geek. I mean, a researcher.
Yeah.
Anyway, he is really smart, and I do know it, but he is a researcher, and so he wanted information, and so we were getting serious, and I said he wants to know what this blended family thing looks like, and so we found a gentleman by the name of Ron Deal, who is now with Family Life Blended, but at the time was on his own or at a different church. But he was running some smart step family conferences. And so I signed us up because, quite frankly, I'm also the extrovert FOMO, and he's the introvert JOMO, which is joy of missing out. And this one was in Colorado in January, and I was like, sweet, we can go skiing. We could take 2 of the kids. So what happened is we saw this picture, but what more than we'll talk about that later, but we also started understanding the differences in blended families. And because we had established the relationship with our local church by being leaders and stepping up and doing a ministry, they were supportive of us when we said, hey, we'd like a blended family group, not because we have all the answers. Yeah. Quite frankly, we just wanted to be in community. We know a lot of wrong answers that we were willing to share. We knew resources because we had gotten connected with Ron Deal and his materials. And so our pastors, they found us a room and said, go for it. And so we started a blended family group also at our church. Some of those overlapped with when we were doing divorce care. So we met the first Saturday of each month, largely because Mike was gone. So we tried to have both of us there, but sometimes I ran it by myself, and we just used materials and had discussions and literally just did life together and understood the complexities of blended families in a way that people who don't live in that world they haven't experienced it. It's not right or wrong.
I could talk about living in 2 different states, and people would be like, oh yeah, I can see that. It wasn't this, or, somebody's going through a court case, child support renegotiation, and just all that's really stressful. And to have other people to talk about it who can relate to it was just very helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. And so you just kind of gave a few examples, but what are some of the other things that you shared with people? Some common things that maybe you'd say that you've said to the people in the blended group, or things that you've shared, or things that you would share with our marriage champions now as they're considering this?
I think the one that I usually start with is that biology matters as a phrase. When we got married, I came in with this history with my daughters, and we had been through this trauma of the divorce together, as had Kristine and her sons.
Related to you. They're mini yous.
That genetics matters, yes. And so, I kind of understand how they think. They understand how I think. And so we come in, and they're kind of my group. And then, Kristine's got her and her boys. And as we're, at first negotiating that marriage, also for the kids, us getting married represents a loss for them. They were probably dreaming about mom and dad getting back together because that's an easier thing for them. And so when we get together, that's kind of a loss for them. And so actually my daughter, Sarah, described it just beautifully several years later when she said, it's hard when you're happy for your parent, but you're sad for yourself. And I was like, oh, that is just so beautifully stated. And we're often blind to it because we're excited about getting married.
Yeah. And I think your ministry leaders, I would just encourage them to understand that every single blended family or step family begins with loss. So even if there was a death, there is a grief process, and it affects the kids, it affects the parents, and it doesn't actually go away, just like any other grief, right? Our kids got married, our oldest 2 got married in the last couple of years. And even at my son's wedding last summer, there's still a loss. This wasn't the design that I had on my son's wedding day that he's going to have to navigate. And I get along with my ex-husband quite well, and we work together really well. But that still wasn't, he didn't have to, didn't want him to have to choose between who does he walk down the aisle. I mean, these sorts of, that just isn't the design. And so it doesn't, even though it's been 20 some years for me in my divorce, 23, it's still a loss. It's still grief. So I think if ministry leaders understand that, and just have a little bit of grace for what that means. For that family and how they show up.
Yeah. And you also talked about that, you kind of have that natural tie to your biological children.
Yeah. So then, the other term that we've heard recently that somebody mentioned was, they called it biofog and step vision. So when Mike's daughters for instance, as teenage girls, they slam the doors, right? And I was like, are you kidding me? Whereas my boys rough and tumbled each other, but I was way less tolerant of the slamming of the doors from teenage girls than I was about my boys running, wrestling in the middle of the living room, because it's bio fog. Like, they are mini me's. They were doing the shenanigans that I do. Not that I wrestled, but just saying, like, it didn't annoy me like the girls when they were slamming the doors. And so, yeah, I thought that was a great just analogy. It's bio vision or bio fog, because I'm not really seeing what's happening, and step vision. It's really clear to me what's happening, because those biological connections aren't as strong. The history is not there, like all the things Mike said.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned that because I think some step parents, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys know, you probably have a sense you feel like you should just love all the kids the same, right?
Yeah, that's common. We come in and we're wanting to recreate what we've lost. We're wanting to come in and bring our kids this. We've had this loss. This family broke up, and now we want to sort of replace that. And it doesn't work that way generally. Because we come in and, the other parent, if there's been divorce, still exists. And even if they've passed away, they're still there. They're still in the family. And so that notion of replacing it. And then I also think that the label step parent is the fact that the word parent is in there is probably a problem, because when you're coming in, if you step in and try to be the parent, particularly when the kid isn't real happy about you may not be happy about you coming in. And it depends the age of the child too. Younger children are quicker to accept. Teenagers may never get there. It takes a lot longer. If you come in and try and be the heavy and be the one who's enforcing the rules, particularly when you're less tolerant, because you're like, oh, we can't have that behavior. And so then, stepdad wants to put the rules down, and then mom will come and step in to protect the child. And now we got some funkiness going on in the couple relationship, because we're not feeling like our spouse has our back on this one.
And I would say, like, one of the things that I do, especially if we do blended family coaching, or we do a lot of premarital coaching, and if it's a blended family, I in particular look at the woman, because in general, I think God made the women to be a little bit more caring. And so I feel guilty that I don't love Mike's girls as much as I love my boys. And so I look at them, and that's where the biology part comes in. And I said, this just is. I haven't met a single couple, and trust me, we've met hundreds, where the bond isn't stronger with the kids that they brought into the marriage or into the marriage. And we were working with a couple here locally, and she kept calling his kids our kids. And it created a legit tension in their marriage. And I looked at her and I gave her the permission to actually have a different feeling for her stepchildren than she did for her own kids. And it's not, again, I tell people, listen, it goes God, Mike, my boys, Mike's girls, and there's a line nobody else would I go in front of a bus for. But so they're up there. It's not that I don't love them. It's just that it's a different type. And I think when we keep trying to put things into a system that's not what it's designed to do, and we're not naturally going to do that, it makes it more tense, and it falls literally always all that tension falls in our marriage. Right. And then we fight, and what happens is, you the stats, I'm not going to quote any particular number, but second and subsequent marriages have a higher divorce rate. And I can tell you why. Is because that structure that's set up to fight against the marriage, and again, all those things landing in the tension. I just want the people that we serve to know it's normal, it's natural, it's okay. You're not a bad human. You don't have to have this shame. You can let go of this guilt. You can love those children well, and still have an affinity for your kids that you brought into this marriage. And so I think there's some of that stigma that we can get rid of.
Yeah. Well, I love that you just, that you said, get rid of the shame and give them permission to just understand that that's normal. And you read a really great article, and you talked about, that you have to maintain your marriage first, because you have forces pulling you that what do you call it? The first time family?
Yeah, the intact first time family. Our family is a very different thing than the first time intact family. Yes, absolutely. It's a different structure. Go ahead.
So I like to define family. Normally we think of family as the people who live in our house.
Yes.
But I like to define family as anyone who the children consider to be siblings or parents.
Yeah.
And now our family is a multi-household family. And so all these people, including people I don't get along with that well
Or we
because
didn't
of
choose.
past, or
Yeah.
people we didn't choose.
Yeah.
My ex-wife gets remarried and now there's somebody else who I didn't choose who's in there and is a parent to my children.
Yeah.
And to not resist that, but to accept that, and to accept that all these people are part of your family instead of trying to fight to keep my family as this group within my household and pretend they don't exist out there. If we embrace that whole structure, as complicated as it is, everything goes better.
Well, speaking about complicated structure, you have created some ways to help people see that with your quantitative psychology. I can't
Yes,
that
there
is
it
so
is.
out of my realm. I can barely say that word, but you've created some resources to help people visualize. Let's talk about your blending.love, because that is a really neat tool that you use.
So blending.love, after seeing Ron draw out the family and
And a PowerPoint, by the way.
yeah,
I mean, just because that was his visual, but
we went, how can we make this more available to more people?
Yeah.
And so we created a web application. The URL is blending.love, not blending.com, but blending.love. We kind of like that follow of it. And so it was designed for couples to be able to go in and log in and answer a questionnaire, and then it builds out their family map and walks them through different screens to talk about some of the different common challenges in blending.love, and then points them to other resources. And so we just wanted to help get that information out there to more people.
In a way that's approachable. Yeah. And I think the cool part of that story is, well, first of all, we saw Rondale, and 12 years later or so is when we actually did blending. It stayed on Mike's heart. And this is where I think God just has, this amazing plan to use our pain in various ways. I think I told you, Amy, at one point along the way here that, I would love to say I have this big vision board in front of us that says, this is what you're going to do. And I think it's on my heart is what I think. And so I think that since we've met, very different personalities, skill sets, education and training, same pain. I think that our vision board put on our hearts by God is literally to step in the mess and strengthen families with the resources and the information and the knowledge and the skills, all those things that we have. Because that's like every, divorce care, blended family group, blending.love, and then we'll get to genograms. Like I said, I would like to have told you I knew all that was coming, but I didn't. And so I think we just show up every day to say, how are we serving and how do we use this pain? And so blending.love really started in Mike's head, has been percolating since we saw Ron.
Yeah.
And what things matter. Mike wanted to know what things matter when you get married and what things can we help people understand. And when our kids ended up in college, the three oldest were in, and they were all getting some sort of computer software engineering degree, computer science, data science, combination thereof. And we said to them, Mike had started thinking more of this concept. And he said, how do we do this? And our kids were like, we said to our kids, we'll pay you more than what you would make at the climbing gym there at school. We paid him $25 an hour, which as a college kid was great.
Yeah.
But what we would have had to pay on the open market for a full stack web developer was more in the $300, $350. I don't remember. We had it priced out. We both were like,
higher.
Oh, we have kids in college that we're helping get through college. Maybe they'll help us. So this truly is a labor of love from our whole family. And then my youngest has then since got a finance degree, but he works for a tech company and actually does testing. So all the kids have been involved in the journey of blending.love, and we'll get to genograms in a second. But it is a software made for families by a family who just wants them to feel seen and understood.
I love that. Can you explain a little bit more what that we kind of touched on blending.love and what it offers, but the kind of the core product, if you even call it, or the core thing is the family map. So let's talk about what exactly is the family map. You kind of described it, but let's talk about what it is and then how a family would find that helpful.
So for me, the most helpful thing was seeing it and recognizing that, oh, my family goes across multiple different houses. All these people are in it. They're all part of it. It's very complicated. And there's something about seeing that picture that really helped our brains flick from light bulbs start to go on and go, oh, this isn't about, my ex being difficult. This is about just a difficult system. Like, how do you work within this incredibly complex system? This isn't about somebody being wrong. This is just about this structure is difficult.
Can I back up just for 1 second? So if you wanted to take blending.love, or you wanted somebody that you're walking beside as a ministry leader or pastor, you literally go to blending.love and they can sign up. Or if you have a whole group, you can be an advisor. So I just want to give the option, like as a leader, I could have invited all those people in our blended family group, which would have been nice at the time because I couldn't we had 22 or 24 different couples over the years that came through with our group. And, when they'd come in, I'd be like, okay, are these the ones that have kids together or they don't have kids together? Is his ex the one that's taking them to court? And this visually shows all that, the map. But either way, what I want to say is you would either sign up as a couple yourself, or if you're an advisor, you send somebody an invitation to take a questionnaire. And so this questionnaire is computer adaptive, but it's real easy to answer. It takes, I think we timed it 6 minutes to answer the questions. And then the computer draws.
Depends on the complexity of the family.
Well, that's true. We saw somebody with 5 X's that took a little longer.
Each side had 5 X's and children with all of them. That one took quite a bit longer. But usually it's going to be about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
So then the computer draws a map. And so the map might have shown you, Kristine, in Rochester with your 2 sons, and then it would have shown you, Mike, and wherever you went in the computer, and then your girls and their mother and her new husband. And so then it shows, and then Kristine, you'd have your ex-husband and his new wife, but it shows kind of like a picture of here, and then all the lines in between, correct?
Yeah. So we go through there's actually layers. So why don't you tell the layers?
So it starts off showing with, what we might be imagining the people in our house. Yeah. And then it moves to show the biological bonds and talks about the biological bonds. And then Ron Deal's done videos for us that are in there. Ron is just such an outstanding presenter that, I tried talking to the camera and realized I don't have that gift set. We'll see if Ron will do that for us. And so adds those sort of a 5-minute educational video on each different screen. And then it'll talk about the legal bonds. And so it kind of builds up because, there's strange things with legal bonds. Like I don't have any legal responsibility for my stepchildren who I'm raising.
Yeah. And I took his daughters, and I should have known this, but I took his daughter to urgent care. Again, extrovert. I'm like, I got her. She had an ear infection. So I go in there like, are you her mom? And I'm like, well, I'm her stepmom. And they're like, well, you can't sign for her. And I was like this. Oh yeah. And then, so I had them, they're like, can you call her dad? And I'm like, sure. Which I thought was funny because it could have been anybody on the other end of the line, but that's a whole different discussion. So, but there was a male on the other end of the line that said he was her dad, and they let me.
I'm glad they let you though, because a lot of times that would be so sticky, and or like even the school permission slip. I mean, you're not as a step parent, you're not authorized to do anything,
right?
Yeah. But you're a parent in the home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange relationship.
Yep. So then after the legal bonds, then you show co-parenting bonds.
Yeah. And those co-parenting bonds, how well we get along with our ex-spouses are so important. And there's 5 different levels of those that have been identified in research. So we talk through those and what the implications are, and you start to see the importance of getting along. And then we go through and we talk about grandparents, because there are a lot of grandparents, and they all want different subsets of the kids at Christmas, and they all feel like kind of entitled to that. Like, I want to see my grandkids at Christmas. It's a very legitimate request, but I'm like, okay, but these two, and there's just,
and there's custody arrangements and
legal documents that decide where they're going to be at that time. And all that's pretty.
And then the emotional bonds.
And then we go through and talk through the emotional bonds and really start talking about the triangles, because there's all kinds of emotional triangles in blended families, and those describe the struggles pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and then you said that actually that map is in Ron Deal's book, that Preparing to Blend, that you've used, and it unpacks it. And I just thought it was really interesting how, it shows that, a lot of times people you said they just want to be a first time family or pretend they don't want to
restore what was lost. Yeah. It's a natural thing.
And that makes the kids have to, they know they're not a first time family. And that you talk about how hard that is on the children when the parents pretend like these other things aren't happening.
Right. Yeah. There was an interesting story, and it wasn't directly to us, but there was a little girl who said, who did like her stepmom, but she said, are you okay when I go to my mom's house if I pretend like I don't like you? Because for her to feel the balance and not feel stuck in the middle, she understood as a child that I don't want to say played the game, but they understood that it goes better when I act like I don't like you because of these emotional triangles that we're talking about. And so kids pick it up, I think, faster sometimes than us adults, because we, like Mike said, we wanted this redo. We want to appear as, the normal intact family, and we don't want anybody to judge, because again, there's judgment, there's, all kinds of stuff. Wonder what happened there and all the things. And so we just want to be normal. Yeah.
Well, and another thing, I'm so glad that you mentioned that a leader could refer people, because you said, like in a group, it's hard to keep up with who is where or what. So if everyone has their map and everyone kind of can see it and visualize it, or you could refer back to and go, oh, that's why Mike's not here, because he's in Indiana this week, because he's got, Susie and Sally, although I know those aren't their names, but whatever. They can remember that, and then actually remember the names, and then know, oh, we can support Kristine this week. It's really helpful as a leader to help everyone keep in track.
I think that builds we call it therapeutic alliance, but it just builds this bond, because I know I can see you. I see what you're navigating, even as a leader, like I can be intentional enough to know names. I mean, everybody wants their name, not hey, you. And sometimes, because I don't always remember names, that might be what you hear from me. But at least if I, as a leader, had a map, I have some idea who might be in the room with me, and enough memory of what their kids or their situation is, or why so-and-so came in with a suitcase, because that's their legal document. And at any given time, and this is a true story, one of our participants, he carried around the legal documents because his ex-wife would do just random stuff in police. He literally carried it around. And so but I could have known that because I'd seen his map and go, oh yeah, it's a super contentious, litigious, ex-wife. And so I just think as a leader, it gives you a lot of information so that you can love your people well.
Yeah.
Well,
and different,
go ahead, Mike.
And different situations are different too. So, like we have somebody coming in and they've never had children before, and for them, it's their first time marriage, but they're marrying somebody who has children from a prior relationship. Well, that's a different struggle.
Yeah.
That's just a different struggle. Or if, the spouse had died, that's a different struggle.
Yes. Well, you've taken the Blending Out Love and you've crafted it a little differently for the genogram.com. So let's talk about that. You use the family map, but it also is not necessarily for blended families. It's more broad for everyone.
Yeah. So genograms, really what this family map is it's something called a genogram. And genograms have been around for a long time. They were really, the family systems theory folks came up with it back in the 50s. And it's a drawing. It has real specific circles and squares for different sexes, and then the different, they just had this whole way of drawing out the family.
Squiggly lines indicate different abuses, where they put a dot or a square. I don't even know all the.
Anyway, lots of standardized symbols, and therapists have been using this for a long time. So when we started doing Blending.Love, we started trying to advertise it, and we discovered it wasn't the blended families who were coming to it. It was a lot of therapists who were trying to work with the blended families. I think with blended families, one of the struggles is that the need is high, but the demand is low. And the reason being, the need is high because they have all this stuff going on, but they don't want to stick out. They don't want to be different, because none of us do. We want to fit in. And so they're not seeing what's going on. And so the therapists who are working with them will be like, okay, do you have a version of this that, would be helpful for us? And
they wanted to say other things that impact families. It's not just divorces or uncouplings. It's also addiction. It's also abuse. So the genogram as a professional tool is a larger indicator of a family system. And it could be an intact family that has had generations of abuse, that today is now showing up in a way that's, that the client is unhealthy, that shows up in their office, and they start asking the questions about, how is your relationship with this parent, and how is her relationship with that parent, or whatever. And so it does show a larger family picture of all the things that impact, shows where we are today. It shows the map of how we got here. And it's also, because we've digitized it into the genograms.com, it allows you also to project forward. So you can play the movie forward. Where do you want to go? What do you want the next 3 generations to look like? And because again, it started on paper and pencil because it was in the 50s, right? Like
Yeah.
there wasn't computers. And we've just made it adaptive. We've made it interactive. We made it an assessment to truly elevate the work that therapists are doing. And we've made it pictures of humans, or people faces, they're icons, but circles and squares, I don't know which one, like if I saw that on a paper, I personally wouldn't necessarily feel attached to that as it being my story. But if I saw, a middle-aged woman with glasses, just kidding. But it, like that's going to resonate a little bit more with me as my actual story. And so we use some intuitive icons. For those of you who are purists who are listening to this, there is an option on genograms.com to hit traditional symbols, and then it'll fill in the traditional symbols for you. But we're really hoping to make it people can own their story, their lived experiences truly, truly illustrated, and that they can take agency over where they can understand where they've come from, but take agency over where they want to go is what we want to happen. So again, we're just trying to love and serve people well, and using the pain that we've experienced in this complex system that we live in to just, educate other people. That we all come from somewhere. It all impacts us today. Yeah. And how do we go forward? And it may not be divorce, it may be something else, but that's what Genograms is the larger tool to represent all family experiences.
And then Guide Your Heart is your nonprofit that helps people, because you didn't want there to be any barriers to people finding your resources.
Yeah. When we became empty nesters, like what else would we do but start a tech company and a nonprofit all at the same time? So we founded a nonprofit in 2021. We had a little bit of a start earlier with just working with a different nonprofit that does marriage and family ministry stuff. But Guide Your Heart is helping to strengthen families with education and outreach. And so for me, it's just how do we, again, the need is high for relationship education. It just is. Yeah. And the demand is low. So how do we remove those barriers by doing some fundraising and providing some resources? And so we really have worked on a multiplier model for Guide Your Heart in that we became Prepare Enrich, not only facilitators, but trainers. And so we've trained, I don't even know, I think it's 35 to 40 people across this country, actually, on this assessment tool that we didn't write. That's not ours, it's somebody else's, but we like it and it allows you to have this framework to walk through a couple, especially premaritally, but you can use it while they're married and maybe hitting a bump, but it's just coaching them through communication and conflict resolution, and then applying that. We say the key to that is negotiating, learning how to negotiate. And then you negotiate all the things. You negotiate your finances, you negotiate kids, you negotiate discipline, your spiritual, your church life. I mean, all those things, you're negotiating every aspect as much as you can.
Yeah. I like to say you have two choices because you're going to have disagreements because you're two different people. I heard somebody once say nicely, two sinners getting together, what could go wrong? So we essentially have two choices. We can either play control games with each other, trying to get what we want, or we can negotiate it. And we found the more we negotiate things, just the easier it gets. And then we start to feel like, oh, the other person actually has my back and I don't. And we can both get what we want or something close to it.
Yeah. So as we train other people to be facilitators at Prepare Enrich, we just feel like we're multiplying because we can't be everywhere. And so we have what I think one of the fun ones for me is we've trained a whole group of chaplains here locally that in southeastern Minnesota here that ride along with first responders. And so as they ride along with first responders, they're answering, they're going to some tough calls, but they're also riding with them and getting to know them. So as those chaplains get to know them, they've done a lot with their marriages because the chief of police here said, broke cops give broke service, understanding that what happens in the home is impacting the community. And therefore he was willing, the chaplains do all kinds of other stuff, but they understand that if I help with the marriage or couple struggles in the home, then that officer can show up ready for work and how to protect the community. So yeah, I don't even know how many chaplains now because they keep growing. So we keep training and we just have a great partnership because they understand the value. So that's what I talk about in a multiplier model. We're teaching people in different sectors. So we've had pastors, we've had therapists, we've had community members, we've had chaplains. We put it out there and say, come learn about this because you're going to encounter people. And if you're willing to step in the mess of marriage, we're going to equip you. And so that's kind of what Guide Your Heart has done. We still do some one-on-one coaching ourselves, but Actually, it's gone down quite a bit as we've trained more people. Like less people are
Yeah.
coming to us, which is just fine because we
That's
want
it.
more people being served.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are doing so much, and it was so great to learn this information. Thank you so much for being with us.
You bet. You bet. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to share.
Yeah. Well, Marriage Champions, if you'd like to learn more about the Stenslands and guide your heart, you can always find us at marriageinitiative.org or marriageresources.org.